only a few stones actually hit me, and obviously they don't hurt. This coat has been through a war, possibly two. Pebbles are nothing. It's built for grenades. So Nida says, not only do I detect fact and a bit of humour in here, but I was wondering whether this is a metaphor for being a feminist. The small obstacles are something we blow away. We've got bigger fish to fry.
So that's a quote from How to Be a Woman, and it's the opening chapter where I'm describing the worst birthday anyone's ever had. It was my 13th birthday, and I was walking across some wastelands, and some boys started shouting at me, and then they started throwing stones at me. And I felt like turning around to them and saying, you know, I'm already oppressed enough simply by being a woman. You don't need to throw stones at me as well. Society is throwing enough stones at me as it is. So yeah, so no, it is very much a metaphor. But you know, within that metaphor there, cunningly, and I'm making this up as I go along because I haven't thought about it, feminism is the coat that you're wearing. You know, in that thing I was wearing a huge army coat of my dad's that had been through several wars. And that's what feminism is. It's the coat that will protect you. It has been through several wars. However many problems there may be being a woman or a girl now, compared to the problems that we had 100 years ago, 150 years ago, you know, we are definitely, there's no better time in history to be a woman than now. We're not getting burnt at the stake anymore. Hair products have improved immeasurably, so frizzy hair need not be a problem. You know, we have Benedict Cumberbatch's face. You know, things are definitely getting better.
Things are improving.
Yes.
For sure. No, I think that's so true. I think feminism and the feminist movement and finding a community of women through feminism and all of these things have sort of like, it feels like have been creating this force field around me which has been sort of insulating me from all sorts of cold weather sexism and patriarchy. So I totally relate.
Well, it's that saying, isn't it, kind of like standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yes.
And I say I'm standing on the shoulders of aunts.
Yes.
Because that's who they are. All these women that came before that have done these things, all the little laws that they brought in, you know, all the marches that they went on have incrementally made my life better. You would not be sitting there and I would not be sitting here if it wasn't for probably 20 women who went out there and changed things. But that's the beautiful thing, that's, you know, one person can change things for millions of people. One person can alter the future, and everything that I write, the idea of writing Moran Manifesto was everyone, I genuinely believe everyone has one idea, however tiny, that could change the world. And we need all those little ideas. That's the only way the world changes, is by everybody who has that idea making sure that we have a society that is structured so that if you have a great idea, it can be heard by the right people and can be put into action. That's the idea of democracy.
I love the letter that you wrote to your daughter at the end of Moran Manifesto, and it actually reminded me of I'm rereading 1984 at the moment because I did a film called The Circle, which shares a lot of the same themes, and it talks about in this book how for the first time in human history we actually have the potential, we have the technology, we have the scientific advances, you know, we have the knowledge for the first time to feed the world, to possibly create peace, to actually achieve all of these things. But for the first time in human history, we don't believe that it's possible, that humanity will allow us to do that. We don't believe in the innate goodness of humans to achieve this anymore. There's this kind of disillusionment which has followed the Enlightenment. There's this lack of hope that we can actually get this done anymore. And it's so ironic and tragic that it really would be the first moment we would actually be able to do it. And there's been all these times in history when we were writing books about utopias and we were imagining all of these wonderful societies and whatever else, and now all we do is we make movies about dystopias and about the world ending and apocalypse and, you know, everything just crumbling around us. And I thought that was really interesting, and I loved that Moran Manifesto was just full of hope, and just the idea that this is absolutely possible. You don't need to watch the news every night. You know, you can have a diet of hope and belief and faith in human beings.
Well, totally. Well, the future is a propaganda war. You know,
Yeah.
kind of like, you know, we are choosing whether we're going to be pessimistic or optimistic about the future. And the way that the news media is set up at the moment, and the tone that social media has, these two incredibly powerful places where we have all our conversations,
Yeah.
and where we go, what's the world like today? I'll look at the news and I'll go on social media. That's what the world is now.
Yeah.
And the tone of both those places is incredibly pessimistic. It's only showing us problems. It's only showing us things when they've tipped over and it seems like they can't be solved anymore.
Yeah.
And the people's reaction to that is necessarily one of being completely overwhelmed and just going, well, we're pumped then, this is
Yeah.
it. But that's where you realise that, like, you know, on a day-to-day basis, one of the greatest things that you can do to the continuation of our species and making the world a better place is to be optimistic.
Yeah.
Is to not believe in that. Because, you know, if we all thought that everything was going to get better, then things would get better.
Yeah.
But, you know, if at the point where you just become, oh no, it's just too exhausting, I can't do anything about
It's
it,
not going to make a difference.
that is where we lose the war. So there's a brilliant lyric by the band The Divine Comedy that fate doesn't hang on a wrong or right choice. Fate just depends on the tone of your voice. And that is so key, because, you know, if you make mistakes in your life, you know, the decisions that you make won't ruin your life, but if your tone all the way through is of one of unhappiness or anger, or if you're an unpleasant person, that will dictate your life.
Totally.
And it's the same with our species. We can make all these mistakes, but if our general tone is one of, we're together in this, we're going to make things better, then that is what will happen. But this is where culture's so key, and this is, you know, the thing that I enjoy most about my writing, and why I think it's amazing you're doing what you're doing, because for too long these kind of conversations have only happened in politics or in academia, and, you know, not many people will pay attention to those things. You only come to those things late. You will only come to academia when you're in your teens or in your 20s. You know, you probably won't start engaging with politics until that time as well. But as a child, when you're growing up, what you think the world is and what your possibilities are is stories. It's the films you watch, it's the TV you watch, it's the things that you see in magazines. And that's why making sure that you have as many different stories as possible and as many different people represented in these things are key. Like, one of the big examples that I give in the books is, when I was growing up, the worst thing you could say to a boy in the playground is, you're a gay lord, you know, you're a queer. Like, kind of, that was, they were destroyed. Like, you know, you know, to say that someone was gay, that was the end of their life. Then you fast forward 20 years into the future, and the writer Russell T Davies writes, first of all, Queer as Folk, and then takes over Doctor Who, and writes into Doctor Who this brilliant, swashbuckling, bisexual superhero, Captain Jack Harkness, who in one episode kisses the Doctor on primetime TV. And not only are there no letters of complaint to the BBC about this, but when I go to my daughter's school on Monday morning, there are boys in the playground fighting to play this bisexual character. Because we've now got a story, we've now got a character, like, you know, instead of just it being the word gay, we've got this hero that everybody wants to be. And I can draw a direct line between that show and that character, and then passing the Equal Marriage Act in this country. Because when you've got children in a playground who are fine with bisexuality and see all love as equal, you know, their fathers and grandfathers are in Parliament, can't go, well, we don't believe in this. You know, your children have shamed you. Culture is there to show you possible futures. And again, that's why it's so important to make sure that you've got all these different voices. And particularly, you know, if you possibly can, to tell an optimistic story, show us a better future. Show us something, show me amazing people do amazing things. Because that's what children are watching and going, yeah, that's going to be my future, I believe in that.
It's really interesting, since doing my work with UN Women and since just becoming more involved in this movement generally, people have said, well, are you going to give up now? Do you not want to act anymore? Are you not going to be an actress? And if anything, I think it's actually reinstilled my passion for what I do and made it more important.
Well, the other key thing about culture is, again, kind of like, if you want to change the world,
yeah,
you can argue all day that something's right or wrong. You can get, you know, you can say women should be equal to men. We should see women, you know, in films equally to men, living the incredible stories and, you know, and solving their problems. You can argue that forever, but that argument can go on forever, and there's no real way of resolving it. Or you can make the right thing cool.
Yeah.
And you can just simply show me an amazing woman.
Yeah.
Like that, and that's what culture does time and time again. It doesn't argue. You know, David Bowie could have spent, you know, all of his life writing academic treatises and lobbying Parliament, going, you know, bisexuality and gay men who are pretending to be aliens should be accepted in society. It wouldn't have gone very far. Instead, he dresses like a gay alien and writes Life on Mars, and suddenly everyone's like, I want to be a gay alien.
That's genius.
Yeah, culture wins. It's faster and it's more fun, because there's the whole thing about change and the revolution of feminism and, you know, all these things, you know, we were talking about, you know, anti-racism and equality and the trans movement and stuff. It doesn't need to be worthy and like eating your fibre and your brown bread,
yeah,
you know, and eating your vitamins.
No.
the future should be fun, a more inclusive future where people are free to love and are not scared.
Awesome and cool.
Should be amazing. That should be a party you want to join. We shouldn't be having to go, this will be the right thing to do. We should just be going, this is where you want to be, man.
So Jenny wants to know, in chapter 7, I encounter some sexism. You make a point about the possible reasons why women didn't have a great role in human history. How did you come to these conclusions? What enlightened you?
When you're taught history at school and you look at the history of women as is depicted time and time, our accepted story of humanity is generally the story of men. We tend to only hear about what men did. I've learnt a bit more since I wrote that book, so that was 5 years ago. I had just presumed that women weren't doing anything, and that was primarily because we were giving birth or having raging cystitis that we were going to have to wait 400 years before they invented antibiotics to cure. And the combination of those two things was why we didn't discover America. That and the very uncomfortable skirts and underwear that we were wearing. But since then, I've learnt a lot more about female history, and I particularly watched, I know that you've seen it as well, that show, The Ascent of Woman by Dr. Amanda Foreman, who is such an amazing
major babe.
Yes. Yeah. And she did the brilliant thing. It was an answer to, so the biggest BBC documentary previously about the history of the humankind was The History of Mankind, and it was Civilization by Dr. Alan Clark, and that is just the history of men. And so what Dr. Amanda Foreman has done is gone, okay, let's have a look at the history of women. Yeah. And it is one of the most mind-blowing programs I've ever seen, because she's done all of her history and all of her research, and she tells an extraordinary story which tells us that at one point men and women probably were equal. It's in prehistory, so we don't know, but we have to presume there was more equality, because we can start to see from 10,000 BC onwards laws coming in that are against women. Yeah. And the only reason they'd be having to write down these new laws is presumably because they didn't exist before. So you can see sexism being constructed. You can see gradually women's rights being taken away from them, being prescribed what women should do, the shutdown of women in society, then being hedged out of activity and being shut down. And to watch that, I just genuinely believe it should be on the curriculum. I think every man and woman should watch it, because so many of these things that we experience as emotions, like women can't do these things, women can't rule a city, we are inferior, we haven't done anything. Yeah. Once you watch that show, it's like, no, we were trying all the time. Because the other great thing she does, even though she's showing you all the ways that women were shut down, she's showing you time and time again these women that flourished, these women that did educate themselves, these women that did rule, these women that did try and change things, these women who did try to connect with each other. And it's simultaneously incredibly depressing and incredibly uplifting, but at the end of it, you just feel, you feel woke, you feel informed as to what it is to be a woman and what has gone before us. Yeah, totally. And again, it's that thing about needing to see something before you can even, know somewhere inside yourself that it's possible. And I think knowing that as a civilization we have found a way to do this, to live in harmony and inequality, and knowing that that's something that has existed and that we could potentially get back to is pretty cool. Yeah, it's an amazing show. I think it's on Netflix now. Yes, so it is available, and I would genuinely, everyone that I have made watch it, and I have made everybody I know watch it, has just come around the next week and just gone, it blows your mind. You genuinely feel a new part of your mind. I tried to harass the BBC to put it back on iPlayer, but didn't succeed with that. But Netflix has covered it now, so it's well done, Netflix. Netflix for the chicks. Celeste wants to know, I thought her argument that many religions were created in a time where women were considered second-class citizens was very important, and wonder what a religion made by women would look like in her mind. Well, this is the great thing, one of the things that I'm working on now is trying to, sort of, for one of the next books I'm going to write is imagining that. I mean, because this is a three-parter, isn't it? No. The probably, you know what, I'm never going to stop writing. I'm always going to come up with ideas, but this is basically doing with politics, and the next thing that I want to do deals with religion. Okay. Definitely. Amazing. Yeah, which would be fun. And, and so some people, it's still, you always worry you're going to anger people, but you do have to remind people that religions were invented by people. Some people haven't thought of that, but these things were invented. So all these things that are, religious rights that, that we think must happen. Things that, when you talk about FGM and people are going, it's a custom. Yeah. It's like, so it was invented by someone.
Yeah.
So it can be uninvented by someone. You
Yeah.
have to remember that these are things that we have invented. And, you know, when you look at so much of, you know, what's in religion, you know, it's almost like a little kind of, you know, how to survive guidebook. You know, when it's things like, you know, don't eat pork and shellfish. That's because they lived in a hot place and those were the things that went off quickest. And, you know, that, that would kill you. You would get food poisoning. And so again, that the way they're writing about women, you have to remember that, like, you know, this is just what people thought at the time.
Yeah.
And so the idea of if we invented a religion from scratch now, what would it be? That fascinates me. If I was a teacher, I'd be in schools, I'd make, you know, and if I was a religious teacher, I'd go, okay, we're going to invent a religion today, and it's going to be, you know, let's see what would happen. What would you kids invent today if you invented a religion? And, you know, you made sure that it was female friendly, it was about equality. That, to see what kids would invent would
Be
really fascinate me. It'd be amazing.
Charlie wants to know, why do you think so many parts of the world, including our own, are so scared of making long-lasting decisions regarding gender equality? What are they afraid of?
Well, I mean, that's down to the political system, isn't it? Which is it's a bit unfortunate because people are only, you know, you only have government terms for 4 years.
Yeah.
And you do get a lot of people who don't really feel politics in their blood, but they're just kind of like, well, that's a career that I could do for 10 years. I could have done anything. I'll go into politics for 10 years, and then they go on to work for other companies or other consultancies.
Yeah.
So they're not really interested in long-term plans.
Yeah.
And also long-term plans are hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's the difference between being on a diet for one day, you know, and eating healthily for the rest of your life. You know, kind of like anybody can just starve for one day. You know, but eating healthily for the rest of your life is an entirely different thing. But being on a diet for one day and starving is completely useless.
Yes.
Eating healthily for the rest of your life is a key tool that you need to have. So we need to look at the way that the political system works and build in incentives for making long-term improvements into our society. And we'll only do that if people who aren't career politicians want to get involved in politics again. The kind of people who will be MPs for 40 or 50 years representing their local area. Because then they have accountability. If they're not there putting in plans that benefit everybody long-term, then they're, you know, the people that they're representing back in their hometown will not elect them anymore.
Yeah.
So it's that reconnecting of politics, just, you know, getting those ideas from the people up to Parliament again. And one of the reasons that I wanted to write my manifesto was to make politics a good profession to go into again, because I think these days politics is so devalued.
People are so disillusioned by politicians.
We hate politicians.
Yeah.
The rise of Donald Trump in America is people just going, well, he's not a politician,
so we'll vote for him.
Yeah, he's like, you know, he's talking
because they
real
think
talk.
he lives outside of that system.
Exactly. Well, of course, he's hugely part of that. He is the system. You know, he inherited billions of dollars. You know, he is the system. There's no one more the system than Donald Trump. But people think he's non-political. He's not a professional politician, and so they're voting for him. And people don't trust politicians anymore, which, you know, to the point where if your child came downstairs now and said, Mum, I've decided I want to be a politician, you would probably treat them as if they had just said, Mum, I've just decided to be a massive pervert.
Yeah.
You know, good people don't want to go into politics anymore. And that was, you know, and we need to change that conversation and, you know, and look to the MPs that do address these things. You know, I love Stella Creasy, who's a brilliant, you know, obviously female MP who's there. She works brilliantly on a local level. She works on a national level. You know, she was there for the tampon tax. She talks about payday loans.
Yeah.
You know, just things that do, you know, things that change people's long term, rather than being one of those politicians who just comes in, kind of shakes some hands, go, I'm deeply concerned about this, and then does nothing about it. We know plenty of them.
No, it's true. I think, God, wouldn't it be awesome if kids were excited to say, I'm going to be a politician one day.
It would be amazing.
So excited.
We have devalued
wait.
politics, and it's to our, you know, and it's, you know, it's the people who get screwed over by that.
Aspirational.
Yeah, the demos in democracy means the people, and we are losing the people in democracy. We need to make it an honourable, you know, an honourable job again.
I want to ask one of my questions now.
Yeah.
So, for feminists, the area of everything from porn to stripping to prostitution is often sort of lumped into one category or sort of perceived in the same way as sort of one big problem, and I'm really interested that you have very different views on each individual topic.
Yes.
So you have a very different view on stripping from what you do on porn, from what you do on sex work, from what you do, and I found that really interesting and really specific, and I just wondered if you could talk about how you see all of those things and why you see them so distinctly and separately.
Well, you're so right that the big problem is that like they do all get lumped together. That's again because we're not used to talking about women, and also we freak out about female sexuality, and that is rooted in again history. Like kind of up until we invented contraception and antibiotics, for a woman to have sexual desire and be sexually active meant that she was A, at risk of disease, and B, risk of pregnancy. And those are things you genuinely wanted to avoid because you had a 1 in 4 chance of dying in childbirth. Diseases were completely incurable. So it was in a woman's interest to not be sexual. A chaste woman would be a safe woman. She had a better chance of living. And from a male point of view, you would want a chaste woman because you wouldn't want to catch a disease from her. These are the simple, awful facts of history. Obviously everything's changed now. Women can have sex without getting pregnant. We can cure these diseases. So if we look at all these things now, something like sex work. If we invented sex work now, we would not have the attitudes to it that we have, because ours are rooted in a time of fear and disease, and a time when a sexual woman was seen as a bad woman. You were either a whore or a virgin. Right. My view, and I'm still flexible on this. I'm still learning about it, but my view on sex work is that we all these intimate things that we are happy to exchange money for. We will pay people to look after our dying people. We'll pay people to look after our newborn babies. You can pay someone to bleach your bumhole from brown to pink if you so desire. We are unashamed of all of these things, and yet there's one thing, sex work, we sort of go, no, that has to be completely special. We just need to make those women safe now.
Yeah.
We can talk later and untangle this huge thing of centuries of us being screwed up about sex. But as things are at the moment, we leave women who do sex work to be in dangerous places. We put them on the edges of towns like sacrificial victims that are left on the edges of town. They're the bad girls that are allowed to be killed. So we need to make sure those women are safe. That's the first thing we did. We make sure that they can work in brothels, that they are known to the police. So if they have any problem, they can go to the police. If they've been trafficked, they can say, I've been brought into this country illegally. I'm telling you now, I need to be helped. And later on we can talk about what sex is, but right now we can't let another girl be murdered, be raped, be attacked, be scared, feel that she can't go to the authorities because what she's doing is stigmatised and not legal.
But you feel very differently about porn, and you feel differently about stripping, and how do you see those as different?
Well, with pornography, I mean, there's a big thing that like kind of porn is bad for women, and if you look, if you're a feminist, you shouldn't be into pornography,
right.
But pornography of itself is just watching some people have sex.
Yeah.
And we see that in classical paintings, we see it on the side of vases, we see it in scrolls from 3,000 years ago. If you walk down the street and someone's forgotten to draw their curtains, you can see it through someone's window.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the people at number 87, they have got it going on right now. And that's not damaging to me to see that.
No.
That's not damaging to a woman or a feminist to see some people having, some consensual sex.
Yeah.
What we're talking about in pornography is the pornography industry and
right.
the ideas and aesthetic that it has.
Right.
If all you're seeing in it, there's a kind of monoculture of pornography at the moment. Like 90% of the sex that you will see in pornography on the internet will be a man will come in, a woman will be sitting there, he'll like go jigga 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 on her tits for 30 seconds, and then jigga 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 the tits, then he'll probably go like 3 times in the general vagina area. And you're feeling like kind of, if you found my clitoris, if it's there, I'll give you the money myself. You are 3.5 inches out. There's no pleasure going on there. That's not even happening. Then he'll get on top of her and do her on top. Then he'll turn her over and do her from behind. Then he'll do some anal sex, and then he'll spaff on her face. And job's done in like 4.5 minutes, which is the average time of a wank, a male wank.
Right.
And you're like, well, if that's all I'm seeing, and that's where children are getting their sex education, that's not sex.
Yeah.
That's pornography, and one very specific vision of what sex should be.
Yeah.
One very specific that doesn't address the multitudes of all the different things that we want to do. And the key thing is that if I'm watching some pornography, that's just some sex. There's no great scripts. We're not going to see some incredible CGI. There's no amazing monologues. It's just some sex.
Yeah.
And that's 2 people having sex, and if one of them palpably isn't enjoying it, then that's not great sex. We've screwed up sex at that point.
Yeah.
I don't see women having pleasure. I sit there looking for women. I've got a little list of times when I've seen women having a good time. It's a very small list. They're all saved on a special folder.
Yeah.
What you see instead, because you want to see an emotional response from a woman, is pain instead.
Yeah.
Slapping. I don't know when slapping became a huge part of sex.
Yeah.
But if I was a 13-year-old now, I would absolutely presume that in some way the sexual mechanics of either lubrication or erection involved at some point having to slap someone repeatedly on the arse.
Yeah.
No, I come from an older age. Before we invented bum slapping, that just wasn't a thing. We all managed to have sex without repeatedly slapping each other. This is a fashion for sex, a fashion in pornography.
Yeah.
So I love people like Cindy Gallop, who does Make Love Not Porn, where you're just seeing consensual couples having sex. It's pornography.
Yeah.
But it's pornography that's about pleasure and about two people having sex rather than a man coming and have sex on top of a woman.
Right.
Which is what we see time and time again.
Yeah.
I don't see any women's ideas in that. She's not going, hang on, I've got a good idea. Like, kind of, we could do it like this.
Yeah.
She's just lying there having sex on top of her. And that's not what sex is.
Yeah.
I'm 41 years old. I've had sex 4 or 5 times now. And I can tell you, it's generally not about that.
4 or 5.
I know.
Wow.
I can tell you about it later.
Big news.
Yeah, I'm a big pumper.
Okay, Jenny wants to know, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing the feminist movement in 2016? For people who really want to do something, book clubbers, beyond reading, what are some of the concrete things you think they can do, direct action, that can be taken to fight for change?
I think the biggest challenge is, again, it comes back down to tone.
Yeah.
Feminism has become such a big hot potato. It's a hot newsworthy subject now in America, in the UK, and in parts of Europe in a way that it wasn't 10 years ago. You could not get arrested if you wanted to talk about feminism. I went and pitched an idea of writing a column about funny feminism to a leading women's magazine. They went, we couldn't write about feminism in a women's magazine, which is why I went away and wrote How to Be a Woman. Now they are commissioning stuff every week. It's a huge clickbait thing. People want to read about feminism, but many people have been put off feminism in the last couple of years because the tone gets so heated. We've had feminism wars.
Yeah.
First of all, people will argue and fight all the time. That's absolutely fine. We can't go, oh, 2 women have disagreed with each other. It's a cat fight. That proves women shouldn't be able to speak in public. Feminism is dead. It's like, allow women the weakness to be able to argue and fight like men would.
Yeah.
True equality is not being perfect immediately and being some superhero who has an amazing job and incredible hair and a pelvic floor and a tiny little stomach and 2 children who are perfectly well turned out. That's exhausting. True equality is being as dim, fat, deluded, nuts, smelly, scruffy, hopeful, joyful and idiotic as men.
Yeah.
It's not being perfect, it's just being treated as a human being. So we need to allow that women will have arguments, but the key thing we need to do is just calm everything down a little bit. It's so important when these big debates that are about the future of half the population of womankind start breaking out on social media, to just be calm.
Yeah.
To just bring a bit of a sense of humour to it, to listen to it. You don't need to make your mind up straight away. You don't need to have a hot take. And very often, I think the problem is that the medium is often the message. If you're doing this stuff on Twitter, which is where the worst stuff happens, Twitter works in such a way that every time someone writes something that you're following, you can't not see it. It's short and it goes like a bullet into your brain.
Yeah.
And it provokes a flight or flight response. And if someone's written something you disagree with, you flood with adrenaline, you're panicky, you're angry, and you respond in fear and anger.
Yeah.
And suddenly an argument's happening with people who should be on the same side.
Yeah.
I've seen arguments break out between feminists who have the same life experiences, who want the same things to happen in society, who are disagreeing on the most tiny thing.
Yeah.
And I would say Twitter is making them do that. Social media is making them do that. If they could just sit down in the pub, have a couple of Bacardis and put some Guns N' Roses on the jukebox, this would all be sorted in 5 minutes flat. So but that's another reason why we need to get more women in tech, because I think if women were inventing social media platforms, they would be completely different to Twitter. It would be much easier to break out and have relaxed conversations and talk about things at length.
Yeah.
And, and be able to interject some humour into it and let people know what emotions you're having, rather than these shouty little statements.
Yeah.
It's everyone waving a placard at the same time.
Yeah.
That's not a conversation.
Yeah.
So we've seen all the placards, we know what all the issues are now.
Yeah.
Now we need to move it somewhere where we have these conversations. And in terms of, so that's the bad stuff. The good news is that there are places where you can have these conversations. Like, one of the most hopeful things that's happened in this country in the last couple of years is the formation of the Women's Equality Party, because they have said, okay, let's form a party that is just about women's issues, and we're going to open source policy.
Yeah.
So they don't have an idea for what this party should be, other than let's find out what women want.
Yeah.
And they are now just consulting all up and down the country. And you can go now and be a member of the Women's Equality Party, attend these meetings, and talk about the problems in your life and the things that you think would solve it. And I don't see any other political party doing that and going, women, come and tell us, let's do this. A party is being built from the ground up now that is inclusive of everybody, that has stated it wants every kind of woman involved in that, whatever your class, whatever your age, whatever your ability, whatever your ethnicity, whatever your religion or your sexuality. Go there, talk about being a woman, and come up with some ideas.
Yeah.
I love a bit of direct action.
Yeah. No, direct action is super cool.
If you do think that one of the things you want to do on Earth is make the world a better place, which is what being a feminist is, what being a decent person is, then you have to make sure that you are aware of what you are subconsciously thinking about anybody who speaks up.
Yeah.
Because I think we have this subconscious belief that someone can only speak up if they are perfect and have the answers to everything.
Yeah.
We are basically waiting for a feminist Jesus to come along who's going to write the feminist Bible that has everything in it, or who's written the feminist TV show that has everything and everyone in it, or makes the film that tells the story of everyone.
Yeah.
And that is, of course, impossible.
Yeah.
Because, again, you just say to yourself, are the men doing this?
Yeah.
Are we expecting a man to come along and write a book that would provide the answers and speak for 3.3 billion men?
Yeah.
And what we have to understand is that feminism, there's never going to be a feminist Jesus. No one's ever going to come along with all the answers. If we're not going to get behind someone until that comes along, then we will never do anything.
Yeah.
We have to understand that feminism is instead a patchwork quilt.
Yeah.
And what we all do is we all sew the little squares that we think we can sew with our abilities and our stories and our solutions, and then we join them all together.
Yeah.
So, I will speak about my experiences and the things that I've observed and things that I know, and these are my squares here, and then you will talk about your things and your powers and your skills, and we sew that next to there. And then you get someone who's like from the transgender movement talking about their experiences, and they sew their thing, and you make sure it's sewn to yours.
Yeah.
You make sure you're all working together. You make sure that everybody's squares are equal.
Yeah.
But you make sure that we're working on this together. Feminism is a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
It's not waiting for one feminist Jesus to come along.
Yeah. You talk about this in your book, how in Moran Manifesto specifically, how Germaine Greer was one of your big inspirations, one of the first pieces of text that you read, and whatever else, and that while you disagree with some of the comments that she made,
absolutely,
later on, you still appreciate the contributions that she's made, even though she can't speak for you on every single specific topic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I absolutely fundamentally disagree with Germaine Greer's viewpoint on trans issues and her belief of what a woman is. I come from the point of view that you are what you say you are.
Yeah.
Whether you're saying you're a man or a woman or a gay space alien, because I was brought up on David Bowie. I just believe what people tell me they feel they are.
Yeah.
But to trash everything that Germaine Greer did, first of all, misunderstands what you're standing on.
Yeah.
As a woman, to have the power to be able to, and the public platform and the vocabulary to speak out against Germaine Greer and call her a bad feminist, is to misunderstand that she has given you half those words and that platform and that ability to do that. We are all standing on the shoulders of our aunts. And particularly, it happens in sort of every sort of, political movement and movement for social change, but it's particularly noticeable these days because so much of our talk about these things happens on social media, that we don't bring our elders with us. We're not taking into account what other previous generations did because they're not on social media.
Yeah.
They're not part of the conversation. We like to think, well, we've moved on from that. We just, these people are outdated. We're doing things a different way now. And you need to have your tribal elders.
Yeah.
You need to have the old people sitting around because we're going to have to fight a lot of battles in order to change things. And these people have fought these battles before. They know the right language to use. They know how you can change legislation. They know the kind of alliances that you need to make. They've gone through these different tactics before. You need people who've been in wars. And there's some of the stuff they will say will be wholly objectionable. But to lose this massive well of wisdom and resource means that we are never going to progress past a certain point. We make ourselves weak.
Yeah.
Have the strength to be able to say, my heroes are flawed.
Yeah.
In the same way that I am flawed. In the same way that all of us are flawed. Again, if we're waiting for a perfect feminist Jesus to come along, who's never made a single mistake, we will have no one. We will continue to be disadvantaged. While the men who are like, I'm not perfect at all. I'm Jeremy Clarkson. I'm simply going to carry on making racist comments and driving my car where I want, and because I've said I don't want to make the world a better place, I'm just allowed to get away with it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a person who says, I'm trying to be a good person, and you make one mistake, then that's seen as unforgivable. You know, some
Yeah.
days I wish I was Jeremy Clarkson. I would just get up, say 10 absolutely, untenable, horrendous things before breakfast. And because he's essentially saying, Bagsy, no returns,
Yeah.
nothing happens.